Now is the time to buy Drake Maye before the preseason hype gets out of control. We'll explain why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. You can also check out all of his great fantasy work over on SI. And on today's show, we're starting our training camp previews, going division by division, telling you who to buy, sell, and some sleepers to keep an eye on. Let's start with the AFC East, Fabs, and we're going to start with some players that we are buying. Who do you got?
Drake Maye, I'm going to continue to be on the Drake Maye bandwagon. I just like the things that I saw from him last year. I know the numbers were not great as his rookie season ended up, but the bottom line here is that, these rushing quarterbacks are very high on my list. And, while Drake Maye is not going to be mistaken for Lamar Jackson, let's look at the numbers that he put up last year as a rusher. 10 games as a rookie in which he started and played at least 40 snaps. He averaged 16.4 points per game in those games. That's pretty good.
It's not bad.
He also finished with 17 plus points 6 times, and he averaged 36.3 rushing yards per game. Again, those are the games where he started and had at least 40 snaps played. Now, we'll do a little math, and if you project those over a full season, Maye would have rushed for over 600 yards and scored right in the ballpark of 270 fantasy points, which is very good. And of course, because you know me, Marcus Mosher, I love historical football as it pertains to fantasy football. I went back to 2000 and I looked at the quarterbacks who rushed for at least 600 yards in a single season to see if I could find any sort of trends. And of course I did. It happened 32 times among 15 quarterbacks where that field general started at least 10 games and finished the year with at least 600 rushing yards. In 27 or 84% of those instances, the quarterback averaged more than 17 points per game. 17 points per game is getting you right into that QB1 ballpark, folks, towards the end of it. Now, in 25 of those instances, which is 78%, the quarterback averaged at least 18 points per game. In 20 of those instances, which is 63%, the quarterback averaged at least 19 points per game. And the quarterback averaged more than 20 points per game in 59%, which is 19 of those instances. So I can't stress to you enough how important it is for a quarterback to be able to run with the football. And Drake Maye is not going to, listen, I mean, he's not Peyton Manning, but he's not Tim Tebow either.
No.
He's a good passer. And the Patriots did add weapons, most notably, of course, Stephon Diggs, Travion Henderson, Kyle Williams, who I'm not sure is going to make an impact as a rookie because look at the history of Patriots wide receivers who are drafted by the team. It's not very good. But the bottom line here is that the offensive line should be a little bit better as well. Drake Maye is on the verge of being a QB1 in fantasy. I want to get him now.
All right. So I'm going to preface everything I'm about to say with I love Drake Maye. I loved him as a prospect. I thought what he did last year was really good. I think he's going to be an awesome NFL quarterback. The only hard part about buying Drake Maye right now is that he's already QB8, and it's hard to see his value being much higher than that. And maybe he gets up to QB7. But when you have a top 6 quarterbacks of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes, I mean, in Fabs, do you see him passing any of those guys anytime soon?
No, but I also think that Drake Maye is not on most dynasty rosters as a QB1 right now. And so if he is on a roster that's already got a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen, or I mean, insert QB1 here, he may be a little bit more available than otherwise, right? I mean, I know I'm in a league where I have Drake Maye and Josh Allen's my quarterback. Drake Maye is going to sit on my bench. So there may be a situation where a manager who has Drake Maye, but also has a guy who's not going to be coming out of his lineup, may decide, you know what, I can move him. And, I'm not going to choke you for a high end, round 1 pick for Drake Maye. So I think it all depends on the scenario.
What about the weapons? Because that's the other thing that concerns me here. Do you have any? Because all the other quarterbacks that we mentioned above Drake Maye have established weapons, and that's the thing. I love Kyle Williams. Like he might be the guy that I'm buying here in this segment, but like that's my concern is Stephon Diggs coming off a torn ACL. Hunter Henry is whatever. Do you have any concerns about the weapons?
I don't, because when you can run for 35 to 40 yards per game over the course of a season, rush for over 600 yards and maybe 4 to 5 touchdowns, that will soften the blow from not having great weapons. I mean, listen, Stephon Diggs he's not washed. I think he's close. He's coming off I don't think he's washed. And I think the Patriots have weapons that are moderately good enough for Drake Maye to throw for 3,500 yards, Marcus, 18 touchdowns. We don't need him to throw for 4,540 touchdowns because he's going to run the ball. So if I can get 3,500 yards, 18 to 19 touchdown passes, there'll probably be, 10 to 12 interceptions rolled in there, plus the rushing numbers, I'm fine with that.
So here again, lastly, I'm prefacing all this that I love Drake Maye. So I'm not trying to just poo-poo your answer here, but when I'm trading for a quarterback that has a, let's say, top 8, top 10 dynasty value, I want them to have a somewhat realistic path to being like the overall QB1 or QB2. And I know that Drake Maye probably won't get there. If you look at the averages that the QB1 in fantasy leagues has had over the last 10 to 12 years, you're basically averaging 4,200 passing yards a season, almost 36 touchdowns passing, almost 600 rushing yards, and over 6 rushing touchdowns. I just don't see any way that a Mike Vrabel quarterback, especially with these weapons, gets there. Like, do you see him letting Drake Maye throw the ball that many times? Do you see him being able to score 40 plus touchdowns? I mean, I know Ryan Tannehill did do it in 2020, so I do have to at least concede that. I just don't see that type of weaponry around him yet.
Yeah, but I'm not drafting or trying to trade for Drake Maye thinking he's going to be the number 1 overall quarterback in fantasy football.
Right. I mean, when you're trading for
a QB1 is a guy who's going to average 17, 18 points per game. And so for a fantasy team that might lack a young quarterback who's looking for a guy who's got QB1 in terms of, from 1 to 12, I'm not talking about QB1 at the top of the list potential. I think he's worth it. I mean, if you're, I'll compare it to online dating. Trust me, I have some experience in this. Okay. When you're looking at the profile, you're thinking maybe she's a QB1. And then when you meet her, oftentimes she's not. She's more like a QB 10, 11. Okay. But still not bad. So like, trust me, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. But what I'm saying is that you have to have expectations that are reasonable. And so when you're on an online dating site and you see a girl who looks like a 10 because of her profile, you may want to expect more of a 6 or a 7. Drake Maye, I think, can be a top 8, top 10 fantasy quarterback for a long, long time. I don't see his ceiling being QB1, 2, or 3. I'm not gonna go that high on him, but I do think that he's got a future of being a fantasy quarterback and a pretty steady one for a long time.
Last thing before we move on, that's why I just prefer trading for someone like Caleb Williams, who has Ben Johnson, who we think is going to be in an offense that has to throw the ball more, that's got better receivers. I think New England's defense is going to be awesome as long as Mike Vrabel's there, and maybe he doesn't allow Drake Maye to get up to some of those higher end numbers. The whole point is that if you're trading for one of these guys, they're not going to be cheap. And I know that they're not top 5, top 6 options, but when you're still spending a high pick or a high early round pick on one of these guys, they're going to be expensive. And I would just rather have the guy that has a little bit more upside. To me, that's Caleb Williams. That's someone like, Bo Nix, I think even has more upside. That's my only concern here. Otherwise, I love Drake Maye.
I also think Caleb Williams and Bo Nix are going to be more expensive than Drake Maye.
Well, they're not right now in startup drafts. Drake Maye is QB8, Bo Nix is QB9, Caleb Williams is QB10. I mean, but yes, you might be right.
I'm
When you
talking about in
actually
terms of trading for him.
right, you might be right. I wouldn't be surprised. All right, let's talk about some players that we are selling from the AFC East. And shocker, we're going to have another disagreement. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not the stress of ticket shopping. But that is where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes it easier than ever to get concert tickets and Showtime tickets or whatever you want to go see. And prices actually drop the closer that you get to Showtime. And you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. One of my favorite features in the app is the panoramic seat view, so you know exactly what your seats are going to look like and what the view is going to be like before you buy. It's so nice and convenient. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We are discussing the AFC East going into training camps, which, by the way, training camps have already started across the NFL. It's middle July. I don't know why we're doing this earlier and earlier, but whatever. Let's talk about some players that we're selling from the AFC East. Fabs, who do you got?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of players that I found during my research that I was dying to get rid of, but one of them would be Tyreek Hill. And it's an age thing. It has regression already started last year. The numbers were not good. I mean, that did not look like Tyreek Hill, a player whose targets dropped way down. And we're going to talk about that. His yards per catch average dropped. His receiving points added dropped. It was just not a good season. And I mean, you could blame part of it on Tua not being active for all 17 games, but even in the games where Tua played, he wasn't great. And he's also entering his age 31 season. And the trade that sent Jonnu Smith to Pittsburgh, and we're going to talk about Jonnu Smith later on in the week, it was big for Tyreek because that's 111 targets and almost 90 catches that are now on the board. And I just don't believe in Darren Waller. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Darren Waller is going to absorb all of those targets and all of those catches. Tyreek is going to get, I think Jalen Waddle is obviously going to be benefiting from the fact that Jonnu's not there anymore. But I just feel like last year with some of those stats, those advanced metrics are a bit concerning. And how many more years of high-end production are we going to get from Tyreek? We didn't get it last year. I mean, he was barely in the top 20. And so if we're looking at a scenario where you're going to be trying to win fantasy games on a weekly basis with Tyreek Hill, I mean, I'd rather get rid of him now while he still has value, while as a manager and a GM, you can still sell him as, hey, listen, they got rid of Jonnu Smith. The targets are going to be there. You could still get some pretty good production from Tyreek Hill. But again, 31 years old. And if you look historically at wide receivers, once you hit like 31, 32, somewhere in that age range, oftentimes, the bottom falls out. And if it doesn't, well, then the decline in statistics is certainly notable. And so I'm trying to get ahead of the game here and get rid of Tyreek now while he still has some value before that bottom does fall out. And Tyreek Hill has never been a guy who's come out and said, well, I'm going to continue to play football for a long time. I mean, I've seen reports that, maybe he's got another couple years left in him and then he's going to be done. I have no idea. I think he has a lot of children to pay for, so maybe that means he'll play a little bit longer, Marcus. But I just don't see. I just don't see a long-term path to really high-end production for Tyreek over the next 2 or 3 years. I'd rather trade him now.
So here's what's tough for me on Tyreek Hill is, where do you think Tyreek Hill stacks up? This is a dumb question, but where do you think he stacks up in like all-time NFL receivers? Do you think he's in the like top 15 all time, top 20 all
I mean,
time?
we talking about statistically?
Yeah, overall, like just statistically, if you're making the case for the Hall of Fame, is he in that range? Because the reason I say that is because if you look at these like Hall of Fame caliber receivers, let's call them that. Most of the time, they actually age pretty well. Like, for example, Terrell Owens had one of his best seasons of his career at age 34. Randy Moss had one of the best seasons of his career at age 33. Look at what Jerry Rice was doing. And again, I'm not saying he's in that tier, but I'm saying these Hall of Fame guys seem like they are able to extend their careers a little bit and still put up pretty good numbers. And I think Tyreek Hill is one of those top 15 receivers of all time. And I do think he's going to age fairly well. Now, do I think he's going to play like to his 40s like Jerry Rice? Of course not. Of course not. But we are talking about somebody who is a 5-time all-pro receiver who had one down year, who got in trouble in week 1. Not really his fault, remember, and then had a wrist injury that he was dealing with. I just don't think he was healthy at all last year. I think he's going to be somebody that still has 1 or 2 elite seasons left. And I think he's going to be able to do it this year. You mentioned all the targets that are gone. If you look at the wide receiver 1 averages over the last decade, it's 163 targets, 1,600 scrimmage yards, and 12 touchdowns. That's what Tyreek Hill has done in 2022 and 2023. 2024 is the only outlier year, and there's a lot of reasons to explain why his numbers went down between the injury, Tua missing a bunch of time, Jonnu Smith getting more work. I think I'm willing to pay the Tyreek price of wide receiver 32 right now, because you look at the wide receivers that are being drafted outside the top 20, very few of them have a chance to be the actual wide receiver 1 this year, except for Tyreek. I think he has a realistic chance of doing it.
So a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned some really great wide receivers there. And also, I mean, Randy Moss had Tom Brady. The quarterback situations, I mean, Jerry Rice didn't matter who the quarterback was, but, down the stretch, he was the ultimate unicorn, though. I mean, but he did have Rich Gannon throwing on the football. So yeah. Rich Gannon was a pretty good quarterback at the end of his career. Also, speed is a big part of Tyreek's game, and you don't get quicker as you get older. Trust me, I know. I'm 2 miles an hour, maybe. I have no idea. You get slower. And I mean, not for nothing, but Tua Tagovailoa, and I don't wish this on anybody, but Tua Tagovailoa is one more bad hit from being out of the NFL. And
that part is terrifying about it.
And then you're looking at Zach Wilson as your quarterback, which is, terrifying is a good word to use there. So there's other things that concern me. Do I think if Tyreek came out this year and put up a top 12 number, would I be surprised? No, I wouldn't be surprised. But this is Dynasty. We're talking about long term. So if you're a team that thinks Tyreek's going to bounce back and you can get him at a decent price, and you want to buy because you think your team is one Tyreek Hill away from being a championship caliber Dynasty squad, go ahead and do it. But I'd rather be able to get some sort of compensation, a couple of draft picks, whatever the case may be now, because I don't think Tyreek Hill is long for being an elite type wide receiver. In fact, he was not elite last year.
All right, let me give you an example of a trade that's happened recently over on Dynasty League Football. I am a massive fan of Jordan Addison, but Jordan Addison straight up for Tyreek Hill. I'm just taking Tyreek Hill all day in that trade because Addison is locked in as the wide receiver 2 in Minnesota. He's got a suspension likely coming, and there's just no world in which Addison ever becomes a top 5 receiver. It would not shock me at all if Tyreek does it this year.
Yeah, that one's a rough one for me too. Now, again, if you're rebuilding, and you're trying to get in some younger assets, I understand that, but I would want to get a draft pick as well as Addison in a deal for Hill. I don't want to do that straight up.
Okay. Let's envision that both of these teams are trying to compete right now. Would you rather have Jameson Williams, who's wide receiver 29, or Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 32?
I'd rather have Jameson Williams.
See, I would rather have Tyreek. We just disagree on that. That's okay. I think we're going to have a bounce back season.
I'm looking long term for Jameson Williams, and I'm looking long term for Tyreek, and I see far more productive years from Jameson Williams just based on their age alone.
Yeah, so I'm just a little bit more bullish maybe on this Miami offense. One last thing, I think this Miami defense is going to stink this year.
Oh, they're not going to be good at all. Yeah, they're going to.
they're going to have to win these shootouts. And like, that's Mike McDaniel's MO. Like, he would love to play in these 45 to 38 games. So maybe we see the volume, just ramped up more so than ever before. Can Tua play through that? Is he going to be able to handle that?
But what's
many
their
snaps?
offensive line look like, Marcus?
It's not great.
And that's also a problem when your quarterback has had multiple concussions. So I think that's something that you have to think about too.
I think if Tyreek was in just about any other situation with a quarterback that isn't so injury prone, I think we'd be a lot higher. But I think there are risks even outside of Tyreek, because we've seen it now with whether it was Snoop Huntley or Teddy Bridgewater or whoever it's been.
Snoop Huntley.
It's been really rough whenever.
By the way,
in the lineup,
who was a Pro Bowl quarterback one year. I don't know how the hell that happened, but I mean, once Snoop Huntley was in the Pro Bowl, I'm like, this Pro Bowl means nothing.
End it. All right, let's talk about the top sleepers in the AFC East going into training camp. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Wanted to let you know that the Locked On NFL Top 100 will be released on Wednesday, July 16th at 10 a.m. Eastern on Locked On Sports Today. The NFL Top 100 was voted on by the NFL host of Locked On, and there are some real stunners. Listen, I did my best. I took about 2 hours out of my day to fill it out, change the rankings. So don't blame me if your favorite player is ranked too low. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Today or on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and go check out where your favorite players are ranked. All right, let's talk about the top sleepers in the AFC East. Who do you got?
I'm going to go with a rook and Mason Taylor, the son of former Miami Dolphins great and Hall of Famer Jason Taylor. So we know the bloodline's pretty strong. And Taylor ended up in a great spot. But first, let's talk about what he did at LSU. Earned a starting role there as a freshman. He had 38 catches in his first year. He had his best statistical year last year, 55 catches, over 500 yards, had a couple of touchdowns. I think you'd have to point out that he played at in an LSU offense that had a really high-end wide. I mean, he was Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. He was contending with targets, so the numbers could have been better. And when we look at what PFF rated him as last season, he was the 16th best tight end in FBS, minimum 50 targets for those tight ends. He was 6th in catches. He was 14th in receiving yards, 1.23 yards per route run, 9th in average depth of target. And give me who the number 2 receiving option is for the Jets right now. I mean, it's who? Josh Reynolds?
Alan
Lazard?
Yeah.
I mean, who the hell is it? I don't know. Where's Wesley Walker when you need him? So he could fall into a bunch of targets. Now, again, he's not going to be Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers, but is he a player that long-term could potentially be a fantasy starter? Absolutely. Based on what we have right now, we know that Justin Fields will throw the ball to his tight ends. Obviously, we saw that when he was with Chicago. This is a scenario where, this kid could end up being a nice bargain. And hell, I mean, I might take him late in a redraft. And that's just kind of throwing a dart. He would be a perfect dart throw if you already have a high-end tight end who you can kind of play, and maybe like a George Kittle, and then you have Taylor, and you could be like, well, I could sit him behind George Kittle for a couple of years and then, see how he develops. But I think he definitely has sleeper appeal. There's no question about that. He's got the talent. He's a guy who's not going to come off the field. He can play, in the slot. He can play in line. He's got the tools to be a player that sees a lot of snaps on the offensive side of the football. And the Jets have virtually no competition for him at tight end. Tyler Conklin's in Los Angeles now. So this one here is a bit of a no-brainer. He is the epitome of a sleeper for me.
I love it. I'm a huge fan of Mason Taylor. I saw him at the Senior Bowl. Thought he was a really refined player who there's nothing splashy about his game. And I know his dad is a Hall of Fame player. He's a very good athlete. He's not a special athlete, but he's also just very smooth. And that's what you want from your tight end. And I think he is somebody that could get the second most targets in this passing game. He's a pretty good blocker, which means he'll be on the field a lot as a rookie. And I think you're right. Like, it wouldn't shock any of us if he's second on the team in targets. Maybe he's second on the team in red zone targets and touchdowns. I think this is a very good ascending player that I want to buy into. And right now, the price is pretty cheap. You can get him outside of the top 15 tight ends. Tight end 16 right now. Overall, 133. That's nothing. I love Mason Taylor.
Everything is there that you're looking for. The talent, a guy who doesn't have to come off the field, an opportunity. The great Bob Harris always says that if you've got a clear path to workload, you've got a big advantage. And he has a clear path to workload in New York's offense.
All right, my guy that I wanted to mention is Ray Davis, the running back for the Buffalo Bills. So right now, we've got James Cook in the middle of a contract dispute with the Bills. Now, I ultimately think a deal is going to get done, but I don't know that for sure, right? Maybe Buffalo just doesn't want to pay a running back long term. Even if James Cook were to come back, I still like Ray Davis because he got 113 carries last year as a day 3 running back, which is pretty rare, like for a day 3 guy to come in and get that many carries. And that's with James Cook playing all 17 games. Like, he was healthy, and Ray Davis still got a lot of work. And one of the reasons I like Ray Davis is that he's on a really good offense that wants to run the ball with a good offensive line. And I think he just fits this offense because he is a between the tackle grinder who gives this Buffalo offense a little bit more physicality. And yeah, he's probably not going to do a bunch as a receiver, but I do think he's a pretty good runner, and you can get him incredibly cheap right now. 135 overall, RB 45. I want to grab as many pieces from good offenses, and I think he's in a great one.
Yeah, I mean, the downside obviously is that the ceiling is blocked, right? Because James Cook is there, and I agree with you that I think they're going to get something done, or Cook will not hold out of training camp. At least the things that you report, or that you see in reports that you read right now, it may not be, they're going to be, hugging and kissing right now, but at some point in the near future, maybe that'll be the case. But
what if they're not
talented? What's that?
I mean, I expect it to happen, but what if this is a holdout, or what if the Bills trade him and they feel like, hey, we've got so much money invested into our quarterback and all these other guys, let's move James Cook for a day 2 pick, and we'll roll with the guys we have.
I mean, if you're of the mindset that that's a possible move, then Ray Davis is certainly somebody that you want to target in Dynasty without question.
Again, I don't think that happens. I think they're going to bring back James Cook because he's just a very good player. But it's not unreasonable to think that that could potentially happen. Maybe they don't want to pay a running back $14-15 million a year, and they believe it's the system and it's Josh Allen. And now we're talking about Ray Davis as an RB2 every single week. I don't know how much value he's going to have as a standalone option if James Cook is there. But again, I thought he showed something last year that if and when he gets an opportunity, he could be very good. I compared him to Chuba Hubbard, and we saw what happened with Hubbard once he finally got his shot. He produced like a low-end RB1. I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happens with Ray Davis.
Yeah, another Bill who could be potentially a sleeper this year, I think, is Keon Coleman as well.
Yep.
Yeah, we're not talking a lot about Keon Coleman at all. And, the Bills drafted him very highly last year. He showed some flashes here and there as a rookie. I mean, certainly nothing spectacular, but that could also be somebody that bears fruit here in the very near future.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we're going to continue with our AFC previews, so make sure you guys tune in for that. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you right back here on Tuesday.